All right. Welcome to the Helm developer call for January 7th, 2021. This call in the Helm project in general falls under the CNCF Code of Conduct, and these meeting recordings are published. Welcome all. And our first order of business is we have the 3.5 release candidate 2 is out right now. If anyone has had a chance to test that, I know we're on RC2 now because Matt Farina found a few issues. So if anyone has any questions about that or wants to try it out, a link is in the notes. And we have that scheduled to go out on Wednesday, January 13th. And Mr. Farina just joined us. So I was just telling folks our only announcement on the docket right now is that the 3.5 release RC2 is currently available for testing. Do you want to say anything more about that, Farina?
Please test it and see if there's any issues.
All right. And according to our new release schedule, we are planning to put that 3.5 out on Wednesday, January 13th. Okay. We have a couple of orders of business on the agenda for today. Based on who is currently here, I'm going to just jump around a little bit and say, let's start with Mark and let's talk about upcoming releases, patch candidates, etc.
Right, thank you, Bridget. Happy New Year, everybody. So this follows up the 3.5 RCs. Thanks, Matt, for doing that. The release process says that we need to establish when the next release, the next minor release will be, so that when we actually release 3.5 next week, we can post the next date. So this is the first time we do this. Do we just suggest something or?
So go ahead, Matt.
I'm wondering, since there's only, it looks like 3-4 core maintainers who are here on the call, if it might be better to, instead of making it on this particular call, if it's better to move this onto the mailing list to kind of get consensus, or if we can make consensus on something like this on this call.
That's okay with me. I can send the message on the mailing list.
I'll say I actually put a tentative one into the milestone
Oh.
for. Oh, I just lost it. Just lost my tab. So I was basing it on Kubernetes. So Kubernetes has not published the timetable for the 1.21 release because they're working all of 2021 out right now. But the current schedule is to do it April 19th to April 23rd. That week is release week. And then then there's a week off, and then there's KubeCon Europe. And so that's the timing. So I have my expectation what it would be then. And so I was looking for afterwards, although it felt kind of weird to have it right after. And so my timetable still clicking through to get to it, was May 12th, was Wednesday, May 12th, which would be again, the second Wednesday. But it's that first week after KubeCon Europe, so it may not be a good week to do it, given the releases right before. And so I definitely wanted to have a conversation on it.
Would you mind do you want to have the conversation now, or do you want to?
Well, sure, we can have it now.
If the maintainers want to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming up with a tentative date that we can kind of propose to the rest of the core maintainers and get some kind of like lazy consensus, I think that's a great idea. So we can have that discussion here.
Given that KubeCon EU is virtual this time, we won't have like people traveling necessarily around it. So it's having something the week after a big conference travel week is one thing, but having something the week after, we joined the chat during the maintainer session that we pre-recorded is significantly less impact. So I see Farina smiling at that. So what do you think?
That's true. The biggest unknown in doing this is what Adam toiled with the most times is the changes to the Kubernetes packages, because every time there's a minor release, it's breaking changes, and we've got to sort through that when we go to do a minor release. And so that's the big iffy on doing it that week in May.
I mean, then let's push it out another week. If we go the week after that, that's still before the Memorial Day holiday, right?
Yep.
So
So you cut a release, everyone goes on holidays, and you're, I like it. So we could do that Wednesday as the proposed date, which would be
The 19th.
I'm slowly typing in chats, but in two cases, it took us more than 3 weeks of active development to change our APIs because of Kubernetes API breakages. And in some cases, we've had to wait on Kubernetes core developers to tell us whether they introduced a bug or whether they are going to fix it or whether they intentionally broke something. So we probably want a month after the release.
right, is it a weird question for me to say, is there a reason we can't plan to do a Helm release in, say, March, April, before Kubernetes blows up the world on us? Because that way, at least we don't have a huge backlog of fixing random bugs in Helm that have nothing to do with Kubernetes APIs. And then we'll be able to focus on just that stuff instead of that and the last 6 months of pent up, bug fixes.
So I think our current thing says we want to hold them approximately every quarter, which is,
Sure.
I mean, we're doing one in
Beginning of-
January,
yeah.
that May is the next. If we do it in March, we're going much more quickly than, say, our 4 times a year. One of the goals here is to slow down the pace or have a predictable rate of
Of course.
releases.
I'm just looking at the calendar and worrying that we're going to, with the possible 3 weeks of API breakage that Butcher is referring to, we could be pushing into June.
That was last time. I mean, or that wasn't last time. That was past times. This last time, it took me 20 minutes.
I mean, that's good.
So it wasn't a pain point. So we want to give ourselves wiggle room. 19 to 20 was pretty easy. I don't know how, we really don't know what will change here otherwise. So maybe our suggestion is we put it at the week of, May. We do it one more week just to give us a little bit more wiggle room. And I mean, if they got to slip, it's got to slip. And we could do the May 26th and then we release and go into the holiday weekend.
If I may, the question I think is going to come up every time. And so the process we kind of agreed that we should follow the Kubernetes schedule. There's I think our customers appreciate having access to Helm that works with the new Kubernetes release quickly. When was the 20 release?
The 20
December.
release was at the beginning of December.
Okay, so
This
I'm just
RT
thinking
is 20.
So we want to go every 3 months, and I think Kubernetes is every 3 months. So normally it
4
shouldn't
months
be a
now.
problem. Oh, it's every
Kubernetes
4
went down
months.
to 3 times a year, which is fine.
Okay, well, that's the issue. So if we're always going to have this thing where, now we're before Kubernetes if we try to do 4 times a year. So if we want to follow Kubernetes, it kind of implies we should do 3 times a year. I don't know what you guys think.
I'm going to suggest we follow Kubernetes because if we do it just before and then you wait another 3 months, you're way past 121 and people are going to be clamoring for 121 support. So my suggestion would be to either do it the week of, I would do it the May 26th is what I would do. It puts us just about 1 month, 4.5 weeks afterwards, unless we want to try to do it the week before. It's hard to predict what Kubernetes is going to be like. And so the later week gives us more wiggle room than the earlier week, given that we have no idea what, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes minutes. We just don't know. And so that gives us more wiggle room.
Quick question on expecting API changes. Is there a way, or do we currently track what are the things that, what are the breaking changes that are going to land in a release so that we can have a better estimate?
In a typical release, go ahead, Matt.
In a typical release, yeah, it can be anything ranging from Kubernetes client updates to client API deprecations or anything in that matter. And in the past, it hasn't been something that we can necessarily track until a release has come out, or at least the first release candidate comes out. That's when the preliminary release notes are available. So that's when we start kind of testing out the APIs and seeing where are the impacts and what could be the risks involved. Like in the past, there's been changes to underlying client libraries. Sometimes there's been changes to the API. So it's really an unbounded question. And so it could be a number of things. So it's just more of preparing for what could happen between that.
And
Yeah.
I will say I facilitated the 1.20 release retro, and you can go examine the published notes from that. But one of the TLDRs there is the Kubernetes team is well aware that there's this kind of race condition between publishing what's going to change and like updating docs and updating notes and getting the release notes ready. Like they're aware, but trying to change the deadlines for what we are going to put in this release, the announcements, like trying to change the deadlines for that is obviously a work in progress along with the actual changes themselves. So like they know,
Right.
but
Got it.
getting enough of a preview of that is, they know, but it's not an easy problem to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of wondering if, there's a good way for us to track specific labels on Kubernetes API issues or something like that. We say, hey, it looks like there are a ton of API breaking changes, of course, which means there's a ton and it's a very huge wiggle room than we are looking for, or, there's comparatively lesser there. That's even before maybe they get merged or they get released. So I was kind of wondering if that's an option.
I love, go ahead, Farina.
Go ahead, Bridget.
I was going to say, I love the idea of someone who's paying attention closely to the Helm project and its needs, also tracking and paying attention to the release as it happens. If you're raising your hand to do that, that sounds fantastic. Come to the meeting every week and tell us, it looks like this might be happening over in Kubernetes. We should keep an eye on that. Like that actually seems like a really important task that no one's currently doing. So just putting that out there as an idea.
Sure. I'll try, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say from a practical measure, because any Kubernetes, we're not talking about the Kubernetes REST API, we're talking about the Kubernetes Go API. And in any minor release, anything in the Kubernetes Go API is fair game for breaking changes. They don't follow semantic versioning. Really, their minor versions are equivalent to major versions. So anything can break at any given time, it doesn't matter. And actually tracking those relevant breaking changes and attempting to is probably more work than sitting down and just dealing with it once the release is cut. That's probably the least amount of work for us, which is why we do it in a typical release. In the last release, it took me like 20 minutes. Some of them can take weeks. Sometimes, like there was one time where they interjected contexts all over the place you had to start passing around. And so it was a lot of change for us, but it was actually very repeatable. Other times it's been far different breaking changes where we've had to rethink how we work something. And so it can be such a wide variety of potential changes there, all the way down to something really minimal, that so far, I think the overall work, it's easier to just deal with it when the changes come out and then pray that somebody someday comes up with a better client library.
All right, so we're to the point of invoking prayer to fix this, which I think we should probably leave that at that.
May I suggest, Fisher, did you say you would email the maintainers list?
Oh, I was suggesting if Mark was willing to, if he's interested in doing that, to go and mail.
I don't mind doing it. If you have justifications that you will express better, then feel free to do it.
I was just going to suggest the week of May 26th doing it. If somebody was going to suggest it, May 26th, it's a pretty safe date. It's given us far enough out to deal with it.
Just be warned that that is the Wednesday before the Memorial Day weekend. So you might end up hitting people's holiday schedules. That's the only worry there. Maybe even yours.
Yeah.
I'll send an email with the date. Mention the holiday. If people have concerns, they should express them.
Yeah, that would mean we cut the release candidate on Monday, May 17th.
RC1, May 17th.
Yep, that'd be the RC1 for it.
Okay, we have a
Perfect.
couple other topics, but we want to definitely get to today. Is there anything else on this one that we need some discussion
No,
on?
from my point of view, it's good. Thank you, Bridget.
All right. Mark does have the next topic as well, which is sort of related. This idea of canceling a patch release and this, predefining the release dates in the HIP. Is there anything else related to that you want to cover, Mark?
Yeah, it's real quick. So I'm trying to close off HIP 2. So that HIP 2 is the scheduled releases. And one outstanding issue is, when do we want to cancel a patch release? Right now, we've canceled the one on January 13th because it falls on the same day. I opened an issue about it. Maybe I went overboard on the whole thing. I just want to know, is it an easy thing to put in the HIP and say we cancel if it falls on the same day, or do we cancel when it falls after a week? Or I just feel like the HIP is incomplete if we don't specify that. So
Yeah,
it could be
so
something discussed in the issue. It's just, it could drag on and then the HIP stays open and stays open and stays open.
Yeah, so the original question I would ask there is, who and what is the justification for canceling a patch release, and what is the value add for that patch release? So in some cases, when we've canceled patch releases, it's because the bug in question is not large enough of a merit to justify a patch. And so it's like a bug fix that goes into a minor release, and it's not like a security fix or something significant. But if it's something that is worth backporting to a previous release as part of a patch because it breaks for the people and they can't upgrade to the next minor release, then that will be the valid reason for doing a patch release. And I see, Farina, you got your hand raised. So,
Well, so make it practical. Like, we canceled the patch release for next Wednesday because that's when the minor release is going out, right? So that's why the patch release was canceled for the previous one, because we'd always do patch releases on the second Wednesday. But
So
then
it's not even canceled, it's just superseded.
it's superseded, yeah. But and so there's that. But then if you look at something like the one coming up in May, you would have a patch release on, I lost my calendar. You'd have a patch release on
12th?
May 12th, and then you'd do an RC on the 17th, and you'd cut a minor release on the 26th. So is that too close? You cancel the patch release, or is it because it's 2 weeks difference, or is it far enough away you keep the patch release?
That's exactly the question. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe the better question to be asking as well is, when these are pre-scheduled patch releases where any bug fixes or things that aren't necessarily warranting a minor release will go into a new patch release. This is not like a security fix, which is completely different from the patch release process. So these are, from my point of view, when I look at these patch releases, I'm understanding them as low severity bugs that don't impact a significant portion of users, or they are issues that can be resolved by upgrading to the next release. It's not necessarily something that is game breaking for a small or medium sized subset of users. And so that merits a patch release. And that would be a separate process than this kind of monthly cadence. So from that point of view, it can be argued that the patch release, if it's coming up too close to a minor release, then the two of them are more or less solving the exact same problem for those particular patches. If you're releasing a minor release with those patches that are already present, that would have been there in that patch release that you're pre-scheduled.
But we're trying to figure out what's the practical date where we say this is too close or this is not too close.
And it sounds like from what Fisher's saying that he's saying this is sometimes going to be a judgment call. So if it is within, a small, undefined but smallish amount of time, it's a judgment call whether to put it out or not. Is that what you're saying, Fisher?
To me, it's more of what's the practicality of testing and releasing 2 releases in a short time frame, because that it does take time on the core maintainers to go and triage the issues, cherry pick them into the next release, test it, and then cut that release. So I'm wondering what is a reasonable time window to say, if we're releasing Helm 3.5.3, for example, but at the same time, a week later, Helm 3.6.0 is coming out. Is a week's amount of time practical for a release manager to go and cut the 3.5.3 and then the 3.6.0? Or is it more of we should just cancel the 3.5.3 and roll that into 3.6?
So you and I have cut the most amount of releases probably, right? So
Yeah.
what do we think would be an appropriate amount of time as a suggestion to say, no, we should cancel the patch because it's too close?
To me, I would suggest a week prior to the first release candidate of a minor release. So if it was, say, 3.5.3 was going to be arbitrarily like July 1st, and then July 7th is when 3.6.0 was being released, just as arbitrary dates.
The
1 week
RC
later.
or the final release?
The first release candidate.
Okay. So in this one, if it's scheduled for like May 12th, and on May 17th would be the first release candidate for 3.6, we would cancel that then because it's within 7 days.
In my point of view, I think that makes sense, because otherwise the onus is on the release manager to basically double book themselves to do releasing and testing for both releases in a short time frame. And that just, to me, it seems like a lot of undue work and stress for what's the gain here for the community. Is a patch release that's already going to be, like, those patches are already going to be rolled into the next one. It's not necessarily game breaking issues. Security fixes, again, are a different thing, and those should be.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Mark,
Can
what do you
I-
think about this? Because I'm looking at time. We got another topic.
Yeah. Same concern, the time. I was just going to say this, because then the
Yeah.
question becomes, when do we cancel after the release? Because there's no point in doing a patch release on a release that just came out, but the timing will be different. So I think we need a further discussion.
Well, and we're gonna keep experimenting with this as we work it out. But I think we have something pretty solid right here. And I do want to move things on to Dr. Butcher's asset pipeline discussion. If Dr. Butcher wants to approach that and give us some insight into what he's thinking there.
And I just literally accidentally closed the tab.
Oh, it's in the
so-
notes.
Brennan Phillips had opened a PR a while back to add some log accountability tracking in. And now since I'm flustered, what is the name of the system?
I put,
Is it the Asset Transparency Project?
yeah, I put the link in.
And it's been sitting out there for a while. As anybody who's following security in the last 2 months knows, this is turning out to be a nice feature to have when foreign actors may be attempting to insert things into your source code. So it would probably be good to take a look at that PR and decide whether we want to just push it forward. It's non-intrusive into the development process. It just adds some more to the CI system to post data to the asset transparency logs. So that the builds are more auditable and verifiable over the long term. Brandon Phillips is the founder of CoreOS, and this is one of his new projects. And he's approached us a few times about working with them on implementing this. So if you have thoughts and opinions, I'd like to bubble this one up. And then if, depending on the discussion, if people are generally in favor, I'd like to just get this one merged. Even if at some point in the future we look back and say, yeah, it's not adding value, we can take it out. But I think that as a security and verifiability project, this is probably a good step forward for us. So action item then is, if you're interested at all in the build pipeline and in integrity of software supply chain, then please take a look at that and comment, and we'll make a decision within the next week or so.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Butcher. We also did add a topic, and I think, Corinna, you might have added this, about the contributor workshop that I know is in the process of being planned right now. We don't have a date yet. We don't have enough details yet to really discuss it, but we are planning on getting a workshop going with CNCF to onboard new contributors. Maybe Dr. Butcher has a little bit more to add to that.
So Karen and I met about this on Monday. We're going to try a 2-track conference style sort of thing, 2-track workshop sort of thing. One designed for people who are just primarily interested in figuring out how to contribute to Helm as a non-responsible contributor, right? Somebody without maintainership responsibilities. And a second track that would be oriented toward people who are interested in becoming core maintainers. And that second track's the one we're really interested in figuring out how to do well. But the idea would be people would come into that basically stating their intention that they're interested in becoming a core maintainer. We'd use it as sort of like, here's your responsibilities, here's a little bit of more like training-ish kind of stuff, and then here's where you would go from here to continue your route into core maintainership. And ideally, the outcome would be to pair up participants in that second track with mentors that are existing core maintainers and be able to begin the entire transition process. So in order to do something like that, we have to run it through CNCF. So Karen has asked for feedback from a few people individually who have experience with this kind of thing, and then we're going to propose it to CNCF, and if they accept it, then the core maintainers will get a chance to jump in, and we can craft the actual sessions instead of just this sort of like high-level blueprint. Currently, we're talking like somewhere in the late first quarter, early second quarter time frame to do it.
All right, wonderful.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. We are looking for moderator notes and triage for next week. So please speak up or add your name to the doc if you would like to do that. And in general, I know we have a few new faces here, and you could see we had a lot of vigorous discussion today, and we always are looking for feedback, input, and new ideas so that we can do better at this. Yeah. So if you've come to these calls because you're thinking about getting more involved with Helm, probably your first step is take a look at the issue queue, see which issues people have reported that you can do, reproduce, add more detail to. Yeah. I don't really have anything else on that topic. Any more action items or call to action from the maintainers? Yes, Dr. Butcher.
We also have one dedicated session in KubeCon EU. If anybody is interested in taking, any of the core maintainers are interested in taking that slot, especially if you're on EU time already, that would be excellent. Otherwise, it'll turn into the last ditch thing where Bridget picks 2 people from the core committer list and the 3 of us record something together. So if you're interested, please let Bridget, are you usually the one who takes? So please let Bridget know on that one. Yeah, where's Martin when we can? He's not here, so we can volunteer him for this.
I think so. Okay, we have Mark on moderator next time. We have Josh on notes, and we have which hero on issue triage.
I can continue doing the non-maintainer triaging.
Awesome.
It's just respond to folks, reproduce issues, but then I'll need another partner to actually go and label them since I don't have the privileges to do that.
Oh, we'll get there. All right, we'll table that for the moment because we are out of time. Thank you all for showing up despite gestures to world. Hopefully next week, everything will be even better. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.